Alright, so the last few minutes of the broadcast actually did not even save, so there's definitely some issues going on. I feel like either with the internet, with the stream itself, something. So I'm going to continue to test here. And we'll hopefully be able to verify the broadcast. We had like 10 minutes of just trying to test it, and I'm glad I did that because we had some issues. It froze up. It was not actually able to save, archive it, so we've got to fix that. At the moment, now I can test it, and we're looking good. 3, 2, 1, camera flip, and good to go. Alright, sweet. So whatever we did to restream, fix the problem. Whatever the problem was, it is now fixed. We'll pick it up where we left off in the chapter, which I believe in those 16 minutes we did get to the actual point of the chapter. Just had a few minutes of me testing the stream that you did not see. That's fine. Let's pick it up then. We left off crunching like a bulldozer while the palisade wall jiggled and shook. As the moon climbed, the bats came out. The students began to hear whistling cries, staccato sounds, and whooshing roars, crisscrossing the treetops and gulfs above them. The bats' sonar, the noise was eerie, the sound of flying predators using beams of ultrasound to probe the air for prey. A bat's sonar is too high-pitched for human hearing, but in the micro world, the bats sounded like submarines pinging the deep. They heard a bat zeroing in on a moth and killing it. The kill began with a lazy chain of pings. The bat was directing pulses of sound toward a moth, identifying the prey and ranging the moth, getting its distance and the direction it was flying. Next, the bat's pings sped up and grew louder. Erica Mole explained what was happening. The bat is painting the moth with sonar. It is firing a beam of ultrasound at the moth and hearing the echoes that come back. The echoes tell the moth's location, its size and shape, and the direction it's flying. The pings get faster as the bat zeroes in on the moth. Often, as a bat was pinging a moth, the moth would defend itself with a loud drumming noise. Moths have very good hearing, Erica explained. The moth had heard the bat's sonar, and the moth was starting up its defensive noisemakers. The banging sounds were coming from drums on the moth's abdomen. The sounds could jam the bat's sonar, confusing the bat, making the moth invisible to the bat. As a bat closed in on a moth, there would be a crescendo of bat pings, mixed with a rising drumming sound as the moth tried to jam the bat's sonar. Ping, ping, ping went a bat. Pom, 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 pom went a moth, trying to jam the bat's sonar. Sometimes a moth's drumming would end abruptly. The bat ate the moth, Erica informed them. They listened, almost hypnotized, as the bat's sounds played over their heads. And then a bat passed right over their fort, with a whoop of velvet wings. The sound of the animal's sonar as it passed almost deafened them, and left their ears ringing. "This world scares the hell out of me," Karen King said. "But somehow I'm glad to be here anyway. I must be nuts." "At least it's interesting," Rick commented. "I do wish we had a fire," Erica muttered. "Can't do it. It would advertise us to every predator out there," said Peter. Erica Mole was the person who had advised them not to build a fire, but even so, the ancient human in her longed for a fire. A simple fire, warm and bright and comforting. A fire meant safety, food, home, but only darkness and chill and weird noises surrounded her. She began to notice the sound of her heart thudding in her throat. Her mouth had gone dry, and Erica realized that she was terrified, more frightened than she had ever been in her life. The primitive part of her mind wanted to scream and run, even when the rational part of her mind knew it would be certain death to run blindly through this super jungle at night. The rational thing was to stay silent and not move, yet her primitive fear of darkness threatened to overwhelm her. The darkness seemed to coil around the humans and watch them. "What I'd give for a light," Erica whispered. "Just a small light. I would feel better." She felt Peter's hand close around her hand. "Don't be afraid, Erica," he said. Erica began to cry silently, gripping Peter's hand. Amar Singh sat with the harpoon across his knees. He smeared more Curair on the point, working by sense of touch and hoping he wouldn't cut himself. Peter began to sharpen his machete with a diamond sharpener. They heard a whisk, cling sound as Peter passed the sharpener back and forth over his machete. The others slept, or tried to sleep. The sounds changed. A blanket of quiet dropped around them. The quiet woke the sleepers. They listened, straining their ears. The quiet seemed worse than any noise. "What's going on?" Rick Hutter said. "Take up your weapons," Peter whispered urgently. There were clinking sounds, machetes being grappled, held, poised. Then a strange, soft whistling noise began. It seemed to come from several places at once. The whistling came closer. Something was approaching. "What is that?" "It sounds like breathing. Maybe it's a mouse." "That's no mouse. It has lungs, anyway." "Yeah, too many lungs." Peter said, "Get your headlamps ready. Turn them on at my signal." "What's that smell?" An acrid, musty reek filled the air. It grew stronger and thicker until the smell seemed to coat their skin like oil. "That's venom," Peter Jansen said. "What kind, Peter?" Karen asked sharply. Peter tried to summon from his memory the odors of different venoms. He didn't recognize it. "I don't know what—" A very large, heavy animal began rushing toward them, making crashing sounds. "Lights!" Peter shouted. Several headlamps came on, and the beams crisscrossed over a vast centipede, rippling toward them. It had a blood-red head studded with 4 eyes. Under its head, a pair of red fangs with black tips were held open. Around a complicated mouth. The centipede traveled on 40 legs, moving in waves, and its body was encased in segmented armor, the color of mahogany. It was a Hawaiian giant centipede, a Scolopendra, one of the largest centipedes on Earth. All right, that does it for Chapter 22. I suppose we could move on to the next one for a bit more, one more today. And then we will look forward to main show's return for a few days and some micro during Tech Week. We will likely finish the book. So looking good for part 2 for today. One more test with a 3, 2, 1. One more test with a 3, 2, 1. And we are looking fine, steady, and stable. Alrighty, good fun so far. Thank you again to Grim and Alucard for joining us with our Lovecraft tale last night. We got to a couple parts of that. We'll likely finish that next week during Tech Week as well. So whatever time we can get to that will be great. Pretty much the same call times, Tech Week, the performance times too. There's really not much in the early morning, afternoon, thankfully. So we'll have plenty of time for more reading, other fun, between other work and such. Take care around here. So we shall see. But for now, it is on to Chapter 23, Fern Gully, 30th of October, the day before Halloween, 2 a.m. The scolopendra burst through the wooden palisade, scattering splinters, while the people leaped and tumbled aside, screaming and shouting. Wasn't that the one, the other mercenaries, like the other hired security guys? Wasn't that the ones they're worried about? They're worried about finding out. Sorry, I just had a couple analytical things that I was curious about. There's a lot of robots, I guess. Robot followers, yeah, whatever. Okay. Screaming and shouting. The centipede had a keen sense of smell, and the human scent had provoked it to attempt an ambush. The centipede mistook the leaf bed for its prey, and sank its fangs into it as the humans scattered. With astonishing speed, it coiled itself around the leaf bed. Gallons of venom gushed from the fangs, splashing and filling the air with a foul odor. The individual legs of a giant centipede end in pointed fangs, foot fangs. Each foot fang is loaded with venom and can deal a sting. The Skolo's 40 legs hammered around, dribbling venom. Amar had been sitting on the leaf roof of the shelter when the centipede crushed the roof. Amar fell down among the coils. He threw himself face down to the ground, trying to protect himself. Karen knew something about centipede anatomy. She shouted to Amar, "Watch out for the legs. Each leg has a poisoned barb." Amar rolled over and began writhing this way and that, while the foot fangs danced and thrust around him, dribbling venom. He was going to be pierced by one of those feet. "Amar!" Peter shouted. He advanced with his machete and began hacking at the centipede, trying to draw the centipede away from Amar, but the machete had no effect, only bounced off the armor. Amar, amid shouts and crisscrossing headlamp beams, the others struck at the centipede with their machetes, trying to distract it and give Amar a chance to escape. Karen sprayed the benzo spray, but the animal didn't even seem to notice. The centipede suddenly let go of the leaf bed and began lashing its head back and forth, opening and closing its mouth fangs, looking to seize prey. It had poor eyesight, but could detect smell with its antennae, which it now whacked around. An antenna slapped Karen, knocking her into the wall of the palisade. The centipede swung around and faced her. Amar, lying on his back on the ground, rolled away as the centipede turned on Karen. He struggled to his feet, still holding the harpoon, and shouted, "Hey!" That had no effect, so Amar jumped up onto the centipede's back. He stood on the armored shell, trying to keep his balance as it heaved around, holding the harpoon, uncertain where to thrust it. "Aim for the heart," Karen shouted. He had no idea where the heart was. The creature's body was divided into many segments. "Where?" he shouted. Segment 4. Segment 4. Amar counted 4 segments down from the head and raised the harpoon, but then hesitated. There was something magnificent about the creature. In that moment of hesitation, the centipede heaved its back. Amar drove the harpoon down deep into the centipede's back, but was thrown off. He tumbled to the ground, the harpoon still lodged in the centipede's back. The centipede whirled around, twisting and writhing, and its fangs snapped shut, the point of one fang slashing across Amar's chest, tearing apart his shirt, and covering him with squirting venom. The venom drenched Amar. Amar curled up moaning in pain. He felt as if his chest had been dipped in flames. The centipede went into a flurry while the harpoon clanged around. Rick and Karen rushed in and dragged Amar away. The centipede uncoiled, coiled up again, hissing. The harpoon stood in its back. "Go up," Karen shouted. "Centipedes don't climb trees." They had camped at the foot of a tree, and the tree was covered with moss. They jumped up into the moss, grabbing handholds and footholds, and started to climb. Because gravity was less powerful in the micro-world, they could climb quickly and easily. Amar tried to climb, but shooting waves of pain were running through his body, and he couldn't grip anything. Peter hauled Amar up, lifting him under the arms and trying not to touch the wound on his chest. They quickly reached 2 feet above the ground, and they stopped in a sort of cave of moss, looking out and down, trying to see the centipede. The centipede was crawling out of the ruins of the fort, the harpoon waving in its back. They could hear it hissing. It did not get very far. It became still, and its breathing ceased. Amar had dealt it a fatal blow with the harpoon. Rick's cure had worked. They were huddled in a cave of moss, 2 feet above the ground, out of reach of any centipede. They had turned off their headlamps. Amar seemed to be going out of his mind. Peter and Karen held him, talking to him, trying to keep him calm. Amar was in shock, sweating profusely, but his body temperature plummeted, and his skin felt cold and clammy. They wrapped him in the space blanket. They also examined him with a light. The slash from the centipede fang had laid open his chest to the bone, and he had obviously lost a lot of blood. He had been splashed with a large quantity of venom, too, which had drenched the wound. There was no way of knowing how much venom Amar had absorbed, or what it would do to him. Amar struggled with them, delirious. His breathing ran fast and shallow. "It burns." "Amar, listen to me. You've been envenomed," Peter said. "We have to leave this place. You need to keep still." "No!" Amar struggled while the others held him and tried to calm him. "It's coming. It's almost here," he moaned. "What is?" "We're going to die," Amar screamed. He fought to escape. They held him down, trying to quiet his struggling. Peter knew that the venom of centipedes had not been studied much by scientists. There was no anti-venom, no antidote for any type of centipede venom. Peter feared Amar might go into a breathing arrest. Some of the symptoms of centipede envenomation resembled rabies. Amar was experiencing waves of his hyperesthesia, feeling and sensing everything with too much intensity. Sounds were too loud, and the slightest touch on his skin made him cringe. He kept trying to pull the space blanket off his body. "It burns, it burns," he kept saying. Peter flicked on his headlamp for a moment to get a look at Amar. "Turn it off!" Amar screamed, swinging his arms. The light hurt his eyes. His eyes watered with tears that streamed down his face, though he wasn't crying. Above all, an unspeakable feeling of doom had gripped Amar's mind. He seemed to believe that at any moment something terrible would happen. "We have to leave this place," he moaned. "It's coming. It's getting closer." But he couldn't say what it was. "Run!" Amar shrieked. He tried to crawl out of the moss cave and jump. Peter and the others struggled with him, and they held his arms and legs, trying to keep him from leaping from the tree into the night. For a long time, Amar Singh struggled and babbled. But during the early hours of the morning, he grew quieter and seemed to stabilize. Or perhaps he had exhausted himself. Peter took this as a good sign. He hoped Amar was turning the corner. "I'm going to die," Amar whispered. "No, you're not. Hang in there." "I've lost my faith. When I was a little kid, I believed in reincarnation. Now I know there's nothing after death." "It's the venom talking, Amar." "I've hurt so many people in my life. No way to make it up now." "Come on, Amar. You haven't hurt anybody." Peter hoped his voice conveyed confidence. All of this happened in darkness, for they didn't dare turn on their lights. Erica Mole had been very afraid of the dark as a small child, and her fear of the dark roared back as she listened to Amar's frightened babbling. Amar's suffering hit Erica Mole harder than the others, and she began to cry. She couldn't stop crying. "Will somebody shut the woman up, please?" Danny Minot said. "It's bad enough with Amar going insane, but this sobbing is getting on my nerves." He began stroking his nose, running his fingertips over his face. Peter could see that Danny wasn't doing well either, but he turned his attention to Erica. He put his arms around her and smoothed her hair. They had been lovers, but this wasn't love. It was survival, just trying to keep people from dying. "It'll be all right," he said to Erica, and squeezed her hand. Erica began reciting the Lord's Prayer. Veter unserim himel. "She turns to God when science fails her," said Danny. "What do you know about God?" Rick said to him. "As much as you do, Rick." The others tried to sleep. The moss was warm and soft, and they were exhausted after the harrowing fight. None of them wanted to fall asleep, but sleep took them gently in its arms anyway. All right, we'll get on to chapter 24, likely on Monday or so, but a good while till chapter 24. Main show will return. Hope you enjoyed a couple parts there of chapter 23, 22 of Micro. And won't worry about the Robo viewers, any other issues. Shout out to Grim and Alucard for bringing the chat to life late last night. We will pick it up here very soon. I need to get some lotion, other things I forgot, so have a nice day. I will see you after rehearsal and probably run through other fun stuff, and a great show tomorrow. We will show Hunt Captures, get back to some Diablo, maybe some time for Darkest, Red Dead. Very excited for it as we continue to save up and look forward to Diablo 4. Main attraction to come. Probably going to get the Twitch drops, I guess, are going on right now. I have other auto hosts that are doing that anyway. So look forward to that. And yeah, we will be getting to soon great adventures. So until then, guys, take care and eyes open. See you in a bit.